Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dennis and here's my assistant Bob, who helps us with really tough questions. In this video we'll find out the most popular myths about bilingualism when it comes to children. Myth number 1. Bilingualism will delay language acquisition in children. This is a really widespread misconception about bilingualism. We briefly mentioned this in our previous video. If you haven't watched that, please follow the link here. This is a myth that was quite popular in the 1950s and 1960s, and in some countries it's quite popular even today, and even among education specialists. So there are numerous studies that have shown that bilingual children are not delayed in their language acquisition. This said, one should keep in mind that bilingual children, because they have to deal with 2 or even more languages, are different in some ways from monolingual children, but definitely not on rate of language acquisition. For example, you all know that I've got a niece who lives in Cyprus, who is balanced bilingual. She speaks Russian and Greek, or rather Cypriot Greek. Her mum is Russian, her dad is Cypriot Greek. And when she was exposed to 2 languages from birth, she didn't show any delay in her speech when she was developing linguistic skills in 2 languages. Myth number 2. The language spoken in the home will have a negative effect on the acquisition of the language at school if the home language is different. That's wrong. In fact, the home language can be used as a linguistic base for acquiring aspects of the other language. It also gives children a known language to communicate with parents, with friends, with caretakers, and even at school they may use the home language with teachers who speak this particular language while acquiring the other language. So it's quite important for psychological comfort of kids, especially if these kids have recently migrated from another country. Myth number 3. If parents want their kids to grow up bilingual, they should stick to one parent, one language approach. That is when, for example, a French-speaking mother and a German-speaking father, they use the respective languages to address the child. Although it's quite widespread practice in intermarriages when German father speaks German to the kid and say French mother uses only the French language with the kid, and we can argue that roughly this approach works and can produce relatively balanced bilinguals. However, there are many other ways of making sure that a child grows up bilingual. For example, one language is used in the home and the other language is used outside the home. And this way, the child acquires his or her second language in the kindergarten or at school, or communicating with friends. The crucial factor is the need to communicate. If children feel this need, they will learn the language. Kids are quite smart, we know that. So they quickly realize that if family members often speak one, usually the stronger language, to one another, these kids realize that the other, that is the weaker language, is not that needed. And this is where the one language, one parent approach often breaks down. So kids must come to realize that they need 2 or more languages in their everyday life. And there are many studies that show that it's better for family members to use the weaker language in the family domain at home, so as to increase the child's exposure to this weaker language, because the stronger language of the whole society will be learned anyways and pretty effortlessly, because the child interacts in the second language on everyday basis. For example, I try to stick to the Russian language when I communicate with my niece Ira in Cyprus, because she attends the Greek-speaking school and she lives in a predominantly Greek language environment. But if, for example, she moved to Russia, then I would try to stick to the Greek language with her so as to keep it alive, because kids tend to forget the language easily without being exposed to it. Because Russian will become the dominant language, so it will become the language of her immediate surroundings, and thus it will become the stronger language for her. Myth number 4. Children raised as bilinguals will always mix their languages. That's not true. So if bilingual children interact in both bilingual and monolingual situations, then they quite quickly learn to mix languages only with similar bilinguals. They would never mix the two languages when they speak to monolingual peers. For example, in a bilingual Russian-Greek community, bilinguals can communicate with monolinguals. For example, a grandma who doesn't speak any Russian, the kids quickly learn to speak just the one language, so they wouldn't jump from one language to another when speaking to the grandma. It's important though that this situation be truly monolingual and not a pretend situation in which a bilingual parent pretends not to know the other language. Remember, kids are quite smart. They know that you speak the language. So children will make an effort to speak only one language if they feel it is vital for communication. And finally, myth number 5. Infants who are 0 to 5 days born don't differentiate between different languages. That's wrong. When it comes to phonology, babies 0 to 5 days of birth showed high amplitude sucking the pacifier when they were exposed to different sounds. So the newborn kids changed the pattern of sucking the pacifier when they were exposed to different sounds. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and put a like. I'll be glad to read your comments under this video. See you next time.